Welcome to Discovering. A group of young muzzleloader hunters hit the woods with hardcore scripture outdoors.
Get a bunch more kids out here and get them interested in the things that we're trying to help these kids get interested in.
And we'll talk about deer browse in relation to the future of our forests. And we'll get a CWD update from the DNR. That's all tonight, right here on Discovering.
The secret streams that flow beneath the cliffs of colored stone. Forest thick and healthy with birch and pine and oak. Surrounded by the greatest lakes this world has ever known. The black bear's awesome presence as he roams the hills and fields. Call of the timber wolf, the loon's lonesome trill. The eagle soaring high above, the trout lies deep and still. These are what I treasure, the only way I measure feelings that I have for this fine land. There is so much to discover when you're a long-time lover of northern Michigan.
If you live in the Upper Peninsula, it's pretty hard not to be influenced in some way by our forests. The condition of our forests affects nearly everything outdoors: hunting, fishing, camping, hiking, biking, and more. It has a great impact on tourism, and much of our economy relies on it. And all of those things in turn have an effect on the forest. A great example is deer. Our deer herd is affected by the forest, and the forest is affected by our deer herd. Maintaining a deer herd that is the proper size relative to the habitat available can be crucial. I connected up with a crew from Hardcore Scripture Outdoors on a muzzleloader deer management hunt in Menominee County.
You can see all these points where it's knobby, kind of looks like a bonsai tree. That's deer browse. And it just keeps going and going and going until it can get above the browse line. We're here today with Hardcore Scripture Outdoors to help us with some of our what's called the deer management assistance permits, which are specifically gauged at helping landowners who have some sort of damage on their land from deer impacts. What we're trying to do here today is use up some of our deer damage permits to try and reduce that browse pressure and kind of restore a healthy forest.
We're out here today. We got all the kids out. First part of the day here, we actually got to talk with Trevor, and now we're out here getting ready to sight in these guns and make sure the kids are all comfortable with each of their guns that they're going to be using out in the blinds. After we finish up here, we're going to head out and sit in the blinds for the evening and hopefully knock down a couple of does, and then we're going to head back into the lodge and have some dinner, and we're going to be having a little bit of talking going on and just enjoying the evening with the kids and with the people that are here with us today.
And always, if somebody hands you a gun, always treat it as if it was loaded. Okay, don't just grab it from them and be swinging it all over. It's always a loaded gun no matter what. Starting out this spring, we ended up as a legitimate foundation, Hardcore Scripture Outdoors, and coming into this fall, we were trying to push for as many events as we can, and we're really thankful to be able to come out here, get a bunch more kids out here, and get them interested in the things that we're trying to help these kids get interested in. We have some kids that otherwise wouldn't have the opportunity to be able to come out and do this today, so we're just really thankful for people reaching out to us and giving us kids that are interested and that want to come out and do this. And we're really thankful for St. John's letting us take these kids out and get them on the property and get them interested into deer hunting and teach them about conservation and teach them about the values that deer hunting teaches. It's a little bit different style hunting today. We're not going out with rifles. We're not shooting deer with rifles. We're out here during muzzleloader season. So these kids get to see some of the history of deer hunting and how things began farther back in history. Shooting with the muzzle loader is a little bit older style of hunting. Teaches you respect for a weapon and teaching these kids a little about gun safety and how those things worked and how much easier we have it today than the hunters before us might have had it. The values that you can get from hunting with an older style rifle is that, you know, it teaches you a little bit more responsibility, cleaning the weapons after, a little bit different style of shooting with a delay in there. You have to aim longer.
and just teaching these kids some of the responsibility with a big group like this with 9 people going out. Teaches them a little bit of responsibility, a little bit of respect for other hunters around you, and respect for God's creation and what He's given us to be able to use out here today.
Whitetail's dinner menu can include a variety of selections depending on nutritional needs and availability. That list includes trees. More specifically, saplings that pop up on the forest floor. I talked with St. John Forest Products forester Trevor St. John for some insight on how deer browsing can play a role in the future of our forests.
We tend to put a lot of thought in our forests into either increasing or maintaining deer numbers and densities based on what we want to see, especially during a given hunting season. What we don't put a lot of thought into is what the consequences of that sort of management would be on the landscape. We often don't think about what that would do to our understories, especially to our future forests. And what we've been seeing here in the southern UP, and it's pretty specific here to the southern UP, is that the deer densities that we have had a very negative impact on our forest understories and on our tree growth. And there's some real good evidence of that. This is a popple, and if you don't know what deer browse looks like, it's going to look like a tree's been literally chewed off, bonsai'd year after year. Here you can see a great example where the deer has nibbled that. And then here's this year's growth. I believe this is a Bomagiliad here that we're looking at. That tree's several years old. Here's some popple from up in Gwyn where we don't have as many deer impacts. This is a 1-year-old, and this is a 1-year-old popple sprout. So you can see that these aren't just conceptual things. This is a real thing that we've been seeing for several decades here in the southern UP. What happens is when you have, say, like a hardwood forest, and you have a lot of deer browsing on all the maple, the basswood, the cherry, you can actually eliminate some of those species from the understory. And if you want to know what your future forest is going to look like, what I do as a forester is you simply look at the understory. You look at what's coming up in the sunny gaps. And if you're not seeing maple, if you're seeing ironwood and you're seeing beech, things that deer don't like very much, things that they don't prefer, that's going to be your future forest. And there's not a whole lot of log buyers out there looking for ironwood logs. And I don't think that ironwood's going to create a very good habitat for your future deer herd either. I would love to show you some maple from Menominee County, but I couldn't find any in the understory. So I got some here from, again, up in Gwyn, an example of a maple tree that it's had some browse in the past, but more or less the impact hasn't been so much. Same thing with this one. This one also came from that same area up in Gwyn. There's quite a bit of browse impact on here, but it's going to make it into the overstory someday. You would always expect to find some sort of browse in the forest. If you don't, then you don't have deer, and it might not be the healthiest habitat. This is my favorite example of deer browse here. You'll see this a lot in the southern UP, especially from Escanaba over toward Iron Mountain area. You see a lot of ironwood in the understory. It's something the deer don't really like very much. But you can see that they've been browsing on this ironwood repeatedly year after year after year after year. Here's a spot. Here's again where it's been browsed. See this knob here? It's been browsed here. It's been browsed here. Pretty much almost anywhere you see this sort of a chewed up bonsai'd sort of look here, you can see that there the bud had been browsed off probably during the winter time when they're eating a lot of these buds. You can see here where it's been browsed. And so each of these kind of forks and knobs on here, most of that's all from browse. Very heavy browse impact on something that doesn't have a lot of nutritional value, which is an indication to me that they're probably not getting enough of the good high nutrition food. I'm not a biologist, I'm just a forester, but I would venture to guess that that's not a good indication of a quality habitat. You can see here the last time a deer browsed this, here and here, and we finally got above the browse line, and suddenly this tree is just going to shoot right up toward the overstory now. So it took all these years for it to get above a browse line just to get toward the overstory. This is the tallest ash I could find on my property for shorthand. I would venture to say that this tree is probably at least 5 years old. I don't think this one's ever going to make it to the overstory. And our cedar swamps are really the best indication of whether there's a deer density that can't be sustained on a habitat. Here we were able to get a cedar above a browse line. You can see the deer haven't quite been able to reach this, but they've stripped the bottom of this tree of anything else. More commonly, what will happen in our cedar swamps here is this. This is not a viable future tree for a cedar swamp. This one will get there, but it's been a slow process. Some of these trees could be older than I am, for all I know. Based on how thick it is down here, this tree is, you can see those impacts again. All the branchiness, all those knobs and everything, that's indication that that's been browsed. So the cedar swamps is where we really see some of the most significant browse impacts. And our cedar swamps, of course, aren't just an economically important tree type around here. They're one of the most biologically important ones as well. They provide a lot of cover for deer in the wintertime. They provide a lot of forage, some what they call roughage is I think the word that people like to use in the wintertime. If you're not regenerating the species, and the primary reason for that is because of overbrowsing, not only are you going to degrade the forest, but you're going to degrade your deer herd as well. Deer are one of the few species that can literally eat themselves out of house and home. And if we're not careful with our management practices, we can see that happen pretty quickly and pretty easily. So what we're doing here today with Hardcore Scripture Outdoors is to help mitigate some of those browse impacts on our commercial forest lands, to make sure that what we're growing is going to be a future forest, something that's viable both economically and ecologically, and to make sure that we're doing so in a way that's going to help our forests grow based on the best knowledge that we have today. The impact is not just limited to just trees. As a forester, we're looking at all sorts of vegetation in the understory to tell us about site productivity, the quality of the habitat, what kind of habitat we're working with. Here, this is called red osier dogwood. Normally a pretty common thing you find kind of in wetter areas, in understories. And you do not find this very much, at least not here in northern Menominee County. If you do, it's not much taller than maybe a foot or two, because the deer will browse this off as well. And so this is always an indication to me, you know, if we're growing a lot of red osier dogwood, for example, or there's some other indicator species like Canada yew would be another one. If we have that, we know that it's not just the deer that are impacting our regeneration, that there's something else going on there as well. So I was able to find this one growing on an embankment that the deer weren't able to reach, and it just kind of gives you a good example. Normally we're seeing this stuff, it's a foot high. Here in just a couple of years, this thing's taller than me. So it's something that we'll kind of use as an indication going forward as to whether we're overbrowsing or whether we have room to allow deer densities to expand.
The way this all came about was I did a damage control beaver job for these guys. They had a logging job. They couldn't get to the job site. It was all flooded from beavers. So they got a hold of me and I went and took care of the beavers. And I just gave them a phone call this fall. I said, hey, you guys good on beavers this year? Because I'm more than happy to help you out if you need it. They said, no, we're good on beavers, but we need to get rid of some deer. You willing to do a youth event, kill some deer? I said, sure. So we talked it over, got the details hashed out, and we did an archery event before gun season. And the kids shot 3 deer for that. And then now we came out tonight for a muzzleloader event. And I think we had 9 kids doing that and harvested 6 deer. We just got back in from the hunt, and it was a successful hunt, and now we're gonna go have some dinner. On the menu today is beaver roast, potatoes and carrots, and spaghetti with venison Italian sausage.
We ask, Lord, now that you bless this food to our bodies, for its use in your glory. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Get on that meat.
Wouldn't be possible without partnerships and sponsors and donations from the public. So it worked out really good for everybody, and it helped them with their damage on the trees that they're having and the herd control, and I think it's going to be a win-win for everybody.
I checked in with DNR wildlife biologist Karen Sexton for a CWD status update.
It looks like the 2018 firearms season went awfully well for a majority of hunters. Numbers were up at the deer check stations across the UP region just slightly, and in line with about the 10-year average. We saw a lot of 2-year-olds in the harvest this season, and our 1-year-old harvest percentage was slightly down, and we'll continue to watch the data as it comes in through the mail survey, as well as that deer camp survey report that all of our UP hunters contribute to. To date, we have reached the goals in both our core and our expanded surveillance areas. The core area goal was 600, and we are at about 750 with additional samples continuing to be processed. That expanded range, the goal was 300, and we're at 650 with additional samples continuing to be processed. So an amazing job from our hunters who voluntarily submitted heads to contribute to this sampling effort. And we're still willing to take additional samples. Again, the department's priority will focus in that core and the expanded surveillance areas. But if hunters are wanting their deer tested, we will still honor that. And then we request that you come in with the antlers already removed if you're looking to keep the antlers. And also, if the deer can come in thawed, that provides a little bit easier opportunity to age it or remove the tissues that we would be looking for to complete the testing. So also at this time of year, deer check stations aren't necessarily staffed with wildlife folks, so it's best to call ahead and make sure that the office that you're going to has somebody available to check your deer or to process your sample. In addition to staffed deer check locations, we also have some self-serve drop boxes. There's 9 out on the landscape within proximity to the core and expanded surveillance areas. You can learn about those locations on our website, michigan.gov/deercheck, and you can find the locations of these drop boxes. They're available 24 hours as a self-serve option outside of those regular business hours. So if you arrive to one of these self-serve drop boxes, you'll have available to you the tools necessary to remove antlers. We got a nice jig rest that you can put the deer head into that will prop it while you go ahead and cut off the antlers. In addition to that, we house CWD tags, a garbage bag for you to place your deer in, as well as maps. And it's really critical that you capture the location on your CWD survey tag. So make sure that you fill out that information as accurate and thorough as possible. Without a fully filled out CWD survey tag, it will delay processing your deer for testing. Staff, when tags are not fully filled out, staff will take the opportunity to make a phone call if there's a number on the tag to clarify any missing details, because it's critical in processing these that we have location information as well as hunter information, so we can get these results back to you as well as fully fill out our data set. So this is how we process deer heads once they come to us in the UP region. We go ahead and cut around the throat region, and we're looking for lymph nodes. There's a pair in there They're probably about quarter size. Well, actually, they're quite variable in size. There's no rhyme or reason why some are extremely large and others are actually very small to find. And this one is a little bit messier and not as clean of a process as we're typically fortunate enough to experience. Because it's frozen, and I try to do a fast and hard thaw by running it under some water. You know, hunters were very patient and understanding with us. I think that we all recognize that we're kind of learning together this year. So hunters were coming not fully understanding what the expectations were for submitting their deer for testing. So right here I have the retropharyngeal lymph node, and I'll go ahead and start doing some cutting around so I can keep it mostly intact, as well as gather plenty of tissue that will allow the lab to work their magic to be able to do the test for the disease testing. And to be honest, because of the time frame of the announcement related to when we were going to be checking and collecting deer, staff didn't actually know what that was going to look like either. And again, this one is presenting some challenges because of the rushed thawing that we attempted by running some water over top of it. Oftentimes it looks almost like a lima bean or some type of bean. This one I've of course made some cuts into. So then that's the tissue that gets tested. We do a shipment about once a week. This will accompany a CWD survey tag that's filled out by the hunter. By the time that the lab receives it, it's about a week's time, and those test results become available to the hunter. So over 1,300 deer tested in the UP within that core and expanded surveillance area, and to date there have been no additional positives. I want to say congratulations to hunters this season. You certainly demonstrated your commitment to the deer herd by coming out and submitting these heads for testing. Just a fantastic job. I think it's a great testament to a lot of the effort by our partners. I think it's a testament to the Department of Natural Resources for continuing to engage the public. And we know that one of the key pieces to successfully combating the disease or managing a disease includes hunter cooperation. So fantastic job. I look forward to hearing your stories in the future at a deer check station.
Well, that's it for this week. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next week right here on Upper Michigan's very own Discovering.